Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by Soccer90.com, your source for all FC Dallas national team and international club gear. And that includes the FC Dallas True Brand Military Appreciation hat. It's now available at Soccer90. Hurry and grab yours while supplies last. As a Third Degree listener, you get 20% off with discount code Third Degree at checkout, both online and in person. That's code Third Degree. 20% off. Some exclusions may apply. Third Degree the Podcast is also brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm for wills, trusts, probate, and business law. Call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 260 of Third Degree, the podcast. Hello. Once again, my name is Peter. Joined first by Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Hello, hello.
How are you? Everything good?
Just enjoying life, right? Forgetting that there's a team in Dallas that plays on Saturday nights.
And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, this podcast, and the original soccer influencer himself. Live from Orlando, Florida, it is Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Greetings, fellas. Sorry about the quality of the audio, but you can only do so much when you're in a hotel room across the country.
The quality of the what?
The audio on the podcast.
Oh, you said it funny. I didn't understand. I thought you were talking about something else. All right.
No, the audio. High falutin, Peter.
Yeah, I thought you said he was in Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's in the summer. That's different.
That's a different
Orlando.
vacation.
Yeah.
Are you going to go to Disney World? Or Disney? Yeah, Disney World?
I'm going to go to Key West. The adult Disney World.
Okay.
Mainly I'm here for work.
Interesting. Ah, okay. So you're not gonna go to any attractions like Universal or anything like that.
I'm going to be 10, 12-hour days for the next 4 days, and then I'm going to scoot
Harry
down
Potter
to Key
land.
West for 3 or 4 days, and then I'm going to come back and do the same thing again.
Are you gonna do some scuba diving?
No, I don't scuba dive. No.
Deep sea fishing?
No.
Anything?
I'm gonna go to fancy restaurants,
Midnight rave,
and sit on the beach and drink, Margaritavilles, and
all right.
Enjoy the drive down through the Keys.
Well, that would be much more fun than watching FC Dallas.
Yeah, it will be. I tell you that.
Buzz, we have an auspicious start to the 2024 season, and I think we should start the podcast with something you posted on the interwebs. I think it was Monday, where you began to track just where this season falls in line with the worst seasons in club history.
Yeah. Right now, it's the worst start ever is 2009. But that season starts to get better, much better, really quickly after Game 8. So within the next week or two, that season is going to no longer be really bad. And then the second worst season of all time in terms of starting is the season we're currently in. And then the third worst is 2003, which is the South Lake season, which is, of course, the worst season of all time and is a horrific season. And the fact that this season has started worse than that is inauspicious. The difference, of course, is that 2003 was caused by the Hunts with their South Lake shenanigans, whereas this one is, has many contributing factors, but the biggest one of which, of course, is that they've been missing, upwards of $5 million in salary and quality players. But it doesn't excuse the fact that it's an abysmal start to the season, and there definitely are more than just the injuries contributing to what this team is, why it's as bad as it is.
Well, stacking on top of all of this, Colorado, who was a really bad team last year and had a lot of change in the offseason, have started strongly and really turned the screws to Dallas last weekend, winning 2-1. And I suffice to say that the excitement level or entertainment level or any kind of glimmer of hope that there's something good to look forward to with the addition of Alara Mendy back into the roster didn't turn into a product that was any more exciting than the goalless draw the weekend before against Seattle.
Yeah, I think we had all hoped that Yarmini would provide enough connective play that they would be able to get forward and do better things. And they did eventually. But in the first half, and maybe even, as long as Yarmini was in the game, he was lifted for a minute restriction, by the way. That was, coach confirmed that for me. It was one of the worst first halves we've ever seen. It was a really poor start, mainly sort of out of a lacking of, I don't know. I hate to use the words like bravery, but there was a whole lot of like attempts to build out of the back. Passes that would come out of from the goalie to the center backs and they would try and get to midfield and maybe they couldn't and they would just back up more, or they would get up to the midfield and those guys would try and turn to find somebody else and there was nothing there and they would just back up again. So Dallas really struggled to even really make a lot of quality build forward and quality play at all. And it really turned into like a massive, sit in a low block and try and just boot it out as much as they could. And really only Ansa right now, in terms of a high player, has much of the get behind kind of game. You would hope that you could get some of that from Dante Seeley, but you're not when he's playing as deep as he was. So, for 55, 60 minutes, it was absolutely abysmal. And I'm sure Coach said that he talked to them politely at halftime about what he thought was bad, but I'm sure he ripped them, I imagine, and called them into question and called their guts into question. Because the second half was a little bit better, although admittedly they made another huge, massive mistake right away. And then once they actually went to the bench, one of the earliest bench moves we've ever seen. That's how mad Coach probably was. But we actually saw some reaction after that, and it did get better.
Buzz, we all are great admirers of the great Steve from Bloom County. Sorry, Steve Davis, the soccer journalist godfather of the Dallas market. He started doing this Substack, and today he wrote an article. And I'm not speaking for Steve. I'm totally speculating, but I think Steve this is about as critical as Steve gets. He's so fair and balanced in how he writes this stuff. And even he is like, maybe now's the time to start trying other people on the bench and in the roster and just trying to see if that has any impact. But my big takeaway from that is exactly what we've been talking about on this podcast for quite a while, which is there's just not a lot to turn to if you want to make changes on the on-field product. And I think for the fan base, that's the most disconcerting part of this is that it when you begin to look at this thing from at a high level, it's really, really hard to see how this season is going to get any better.
Yeah, I think there's, without some significant changes to the roster, it is going to be what it is. Obviously, you can wait for some of the injuries to get better, and that will help, certainly. A coach is not likely to change his fundamental beliefs, though. And this coach seems to really be believing in this 3-4-3 for a time. Trying to convert the team to play a different way at this point in the season would be tough. You'd have to start over in many ways, unless you go to a formation they're already very familiar with. But I think Steve is probably, leading us in a way to something we probably all could take away from this last game, which, even based on Coach's comments in the post-game press conference where he was talking about how great the people that came into the game did and how much energy they brought. Well, there's some alternatives right there. People that had been on the bench that maybe brought more fire, brought more energy, and brought more bravery in the latter half of that game. Maybe that's the first step in trying some other things. Maybe there's some people that have not had a good start to the year that maybe are now maybe figuring it out, and later we'll talk about who those might be probably. And but within a context of the owner, the TD, and the coach, there's only so many things you can change. There really is not a lot of options for change. I think Doyle and Bogert have written about this team too and said, where is the way forward? And the bottom line is that I don't think the players have given up on the coach yet. So
what makes you say that?
Attitude. Well, for a fact, like when the players that he brought in reacted the way they did, when they have their good moment and they kind of thump their chest a little bit, they don't glare at coach or yell at the coach back, or the fact that there are segments of the team that are in some games showing fight and bat and want to battle and want to put it out effort. The fact that when you go to training, you watch guys. When I go to training, I watch guys still trying to compete and still getting mad with things the way they are. As a season like this wears on, if the season's going the wrong way, you'll find people stop being mad at each other to a certain extent in training. As that they stop really competing aggressively, and they stop being demonstrative when they come into games, and they stop being physical in response to the other team and things like that. So we're not seeing those signs yet. I don't think we're seeing those signs yet.
Dan, I'm going to turn to you in this time of need because, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, I suspect you have a lot of experience in your life as a Luton fan of really bad seasons. And you've been through the good and the bad with a club like Luton in your lifetime. And I wonder if, as you see how this season is rolling out and what we all think kind of pretends as to how this thing's going to play itself out through the fall, if you have a mindset about it or some sort of advice or insight that you would share with somebody who may not be used to this.
That's difficult, right? So you can have a terrible team but entertaining games. This is just so bland. It's there's a definite point where apathy is going to kick in, and all the marketing efforts, at least for the people that are there for soccer, really aren't going to matter anymore. That's going to be the difficult point. I mean, watching a crappy team, everyone at any level, right? They've had crappy seasons. They've had crappy runs in seasons. It happens. There's nothing really to deal with there, but at least there's some entertainment value, because ultimately that's all this is for everyone. It's an entertainment. It's an outlet, and if you take that part out of it and it's just game after game is dragging and boring, then that's where it's going to get rough for fans to stick around. And historically, those are the times where people are like, screw that. I don't want to make this hour drive from Fort Worth to Frisco, or I don't want to, deal with the tollway and the traffic or kind of whatever it may be. And that's where people walk away.
It was funny. I thought about this the other day, guys, which was I was somewhat surprised the turnout for the Seattle game was as good as it was, considering how bad this season has started and the fact that the club has been successful in selling out all the games this year. What would it mean if, in fact, the club continued to have success in attendance and ticket sales, even if the club and the team is performing continues to perform this poorly? Is there anything else to read into that?
Well, just that that Austin was right in the sense that if you can do a fair amount of marketing and it can make your game presentation better, make it more enticing to people, and have entertainment value beyond just the fact that there's a soccer game on the field, there's that matters, that you can spend money and get people into your building. There is a segment of the audience that is not particularly cultured in their soccer watching. They can watch a soccer game and enjoy it, but they may not see the high level of nuance that other people might see. And the amount of people that I think would watch an FC Dallas game and say that it's bad soccer is not 80% of the audience. It's more like 20% of the audience. There are people that will stop coming, but for the most people, I think this is a reason why the Hunts have never been really crazy about the hardcore fans. What they, supporter type culture, what they care about is the family culture, and they want to sell season tickets to people that are going to come no matter what, because they're bringing their, family and their kids, or they're bringing their three buddies, and they're going to be there every game no matter what.
You got any thoughts on that, Dan?
No, I just think the challenge is a little bit different, because it's not. I mean, at least, like I says, for the people that are watching for the soccer, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just so lackluster. yeah, they're 100% marketing at families and people that aren't really going to be, people that aren't going to be listening to this, that aren't going to be reading the blog. They're not going to read breakdowns, game stories, news stories. They're just kind of showing up for a fun time, a cheap beer, and whatever else.
Remember, too, of course, that there's a segment of the audience that's old enough to remember when we never had professional soccer at this level at all, and they just like to go watch it no matter what. And there's a segment of the population, when we see other new teams come to the league, that their markets go crazy without having any idea of how good the team's going to be. Look at Austin and their sensational first season when the team was good, and then their team got bad over the last 2 years. They've still had pretty dang good numbers. I mean, it's not quite as rapid as it was, but it's 80% there. I just think that there's a segment of the population that just loves the idea that there's a high-level professional game to go watch. And even if FC Dallas isn't terrible, maybe Messi comes to town, or maybe somebody else's favorite team comes to town, or somebody else's favorite player comes to town.
I think with the new markets, it's always interesting because like New York City lost some absurd number, like 15,000 fans in their third or fourth year. When FC Dallas played down at Austin, that end behind the goal at Austin that's normally crazy full, there were an awful lot of green seats visible. You kind of in those new markets, they have to strike really hard from the off and then kind of maintain something. I know, like with Austin, a lot of people are unhappy about Josh Wolf being kept on. New York City, it was, I don't remember exactly what it was with them. But there's that kind of similarity. FC Dallas has raised the attendances that much, and it was all in this new era and more exciting soccer, more attacking soccer, and suddenly it's, we're just going to be that Simpsons sketch from 20 some years ago.
It will be fascinating to watch and see if and when the poor play tails off in the stands and changes the stands. That's part of what we do too, is try and watch a bigger picture. And so that part will be, I'll be curious to see if it continues to, I'm not going to enjoy it, but it'll be something to pay attention to.
Well, going back to the game and the team, more specifically, Nkosi Tafari update. Anybody? What's going on with him now?
Yeah, I talked to Coach specifically. That was like the second or third question I asked him this week in training, and I said, "Okay, did Nkosi respond the way you wanted? Is that what he did in this game? Is that what you wanted?" He said, "Yes, absolutely." He said, "This kind of demonstrative, aggressive, chest-thumping Nkosi is what he wants out of Nkosi." And he's had conversations with him about, you have to walk a line, of course, between recklessness and aggressiveness. You don't want to be getting too many cards or red cards or anything, but you need to be physical and you need to be attacking and you need to be proactive. And he said that the way he played in this game is what he wants out of the guy. So, by whatever measure you want to use in terms of metrics of his play, Coach, from what Coach responded to me, he got what he wanted out of benching Nkosi. So is that benching experiment over? I think it probably is going to be, based on his comments post game about the subs he made, and then me specifically when I asked about Nkosi. And so I think that's kind of what I mean about guys have not given up. Guys are still fighting to be in the team and on the field. Guys are still fighting in the games. Even if the play at the beginning was bad, you can look at the way Bernie came in. And even Logan Farrington came in, and they brought energy, and they brought it was infectious, and they lifted the whole team just by moving and competing and fighting, and Bernie getting balls into the box that we hadn't seen a lot of before. And even Paul had like 5 crosses or something, which is not what he usually has been doing. So again, some positives from the back end of this game that you can take away, I think. Nkosi being for sure one of them.
Buzz, I was thinking as you were talking, if you were told you get to pick the starting 11 for the Houston game, I'm not asking you to predict who it would be. What I'm asking you is, who would you put out there to start the game on Saturday?
Well, Nkosi won. It's a tough question to answer because a lot of the things I would do would not involve a 3-4-3.
No, you can change the formation, whatever you want to do. I'm just asking. Everybody loves Buzz. Everybody thinks Buzz is smart about this. I'm interested in what Buzz's starting 11 for Houston is.
Well, pending the health of some players, I would bring Marco. I would go back to a 4-3-3, and I would bring a Marco back at left back, and I would use Ema at right back, and I would play with Nkosi and Ibi. That's your best back four. And then in midfield, Yarmendi, of course, and then I would try and bring back on the wing play, which was so good the last couple of years. Other than, I think Leget's got a knock, so I won't pick him, but I would definitely try and have Bernie on there. I definitely would try and have Musa on there if Jesus is healthy. Absolutely, you picking Jesus. If you're not, I'd be tempted to pick Logan Farrington. I know Logan Farrington has got over Ansa. I know Logan struggles at times with the pace of the game still, and I know that he and Musa are kind of similar players. But if you're talking about that other wing, at this point, I don't know that Paul's given you enough that I wouldn't try Logan out there. And then the problem right now is still your midfield with no Paxton. Even with the Yarmendi, I don't really know who else you would put on the field with Yarmendi, since you don't have Leggett probably this weekend, maybe, and you're basically stuck fielding, a Paxton Delgado or Liam Frazier or somebody like that, and it's really not. It doesn't changing formations doesn't solve what is your major problem right now, which is your ability to link from your defense to your offense, and until you can figure out how to solve that, and I'm not sure that you have the bodies to be able to solve that, because you can put Siki in there, who has some of that connective tissue, but he tends to make these defensive errors and make 3 or 4 passes that just absolutely kill you at some point during the game. So you could put Norris out there, but he's still in the same sort of boat where he's still too reactive at this level. He's playing really well for North Texas, so honestly, right now it's like I don't know that I have a better idea about how to fix it than coach does, because of what your problems are, because of what you're missing. Until you can replace Paxton, I don't know that there's a good way out of your biggest midfield problem.
All right, well, that is a perfect segue into the other kind of touchy subject of the week, which is, it appears, knowing that this team is riddled with holes and gaping open sores, other teams are out making moves and changes in their roster and signing players and attempting to get better as the window closed. I guess it was today or yesterday. I can't remember when it was. And I think there was even at one point there was rumor running around that Dallas was in the hunt for a center back.
No, not a rumor.
And the window. What do you mean?
Well, for like 4 straight podcasts now, I've told you that coach flat out said they're after a center back and they're after a center back.
No. I thought somebody reported there was a specific center back that had been been named or targeted or identified.
Not that I can think of.
Oh, okay. I thought Bogert tweeted something about Dallas had their eye on a center back or something.
That was it. Just that Dallas was after a center back. That's all he said. He didn't say who.
Okay. My point is that the window closed and nothing has happened.
Yeah.
And Dallas is no better today than it was a week ago, and won't be making any changes apparently until the summer transfer window, when it'll be way too late to have any effect on this particular season.
Yeah. I don't want to sound. I'm going to have to explain why this happened, but I don't want people to think that I'm defending them, because we've been saying for like 2 years, and for sure all this winter we were saying you're short of center back, not just a center back, because they added a center back. They added Carl Sante. They're short of starting center back. So we've been saying it for a long, long time. But here's the buts, and here's how it got to where it did. And this is also true of a midfielder to replace Paxton. The reason I think they didn't find a midfielder to replace Paxton is because of the time frame. They've only just recently, within the last couple of weeks, realized that Paxton was going to be out for the year. they know they can put him on season-ending IR. They know they need to replace him, but there was such a short time frame that would have been very difficult to do. And that's, in a way, wrongly, but in a way, that's true of the center back, because they didn't decide that they needed a center back until 3 or 4 weeks into the season. Probably when they tried to go back to the 4-4-2 for a game or two, and that didn't work either. And then they realized that they really needed to go get a center back. So, I think it's undefensible. And we even said that, like, the fact that they didn't recognize that made me think that they don't understand the league well enough. But once they finally decided to go get one, they have the ability to add one in terms of money and roster moves. You'll have to cut a senior roster player or buy them out to get somebody in. You can get one person in with Paxton going on season in the IR, but then the second one, you'll have to cut somebody. So they can do that, and they could do that. You even now with the window closed, you can trade inside the league, and you can sign a free agent that is already a free agent. As long as they were free during the window, you could get them now. But that's the real problem. You don't want to add a player just to add a player. You only want to add a player that will make your team better. So you have to find somebody that's going to outplay walking in the door and be high enough quality that they're going to be better than everything else you have. And that's harder to do because MLS is a better league now. And it's particularly hard to do in the primary MLS window because that's the window when everybody else is in their crunch time. If you'd have done it back in December or early January, when other teams are in their mid-season around the world or in their mid-season windows, and they're more likely to be able to move and do pieces and things like that. But by the time Dallas realizes they needed somebody, their windows were all closed, which means that they're only going to give up somebody that they find surplus to requirements. They know they're not going to have them past the end of the season, and they're not part of the mix now. Well, who's got a player laying around better than what Dallas has that they're willing to part with that they don't need, that isn't crazy expensive? Now, listen, I agree with you. They've fucked this up big time, that they didn't recognize this in advance. But I understand why they didn't get it done in this window and why it'll be next window.
I see. This is the part that I find really hard to believe, and I do, and this is where, and again, I'm not challenging you, Buzz. I'm just asking the obvious question, which is, there is an entire globe of soccer players to choose from. Musa was an extra player Benfica had laying around that they knew wasn't going to be a starting player and were happy to sell. Now, I'm not suggesting the Hunts go out and spend another $10 million. And by the way, I do think a big part of this calculation is the fact the Hunts spent all the money they were ever going to spend. And I think part of the reason why they aren't adding anybody right now is because they probably internally don't want to spend any more money. They blew it all on Musa.
Yeah, you can't add a DP because those are all filled. Let me finish my point here.
Yep. I find it hard to believe in this transfer window, a club like Dallas, if they wanted and were willing to spend the money, can't find somebody that could help this team right now that wouldn't be better than Frazier or Delgado or Endeley or any of these other guys that are on the team that by and large in this league are spare players. I think the question is maybe Dallas just isn't very good at this part of the job.
Oh yeah, that's entirely possible. Yeah, listen, I want to make it very clear, I'm not defending them. I'm just saying.
Oh, I know you're not.
Yeah, like the thing about, like, is there a player good enough that you could, if you had the money, you could get him? You could, but the problem is that the other team that can no longer replace them. Like, they went out and got Musa and spent $10 million on Benfica's third striker, because Benfica was in the window when they could replace Musa, right? Well, if you bought Musa today, Benfica couldn't replace him because their window's closed, right? So that's different.
I still believe there is plenty of really top quality players running around the EFL just as a starting point, or in the Brazilian leagues, or somewhere in South America or Central America that could make this team better. And I refuse to believe that the well is dry and Dallas just can't, or like, oh, there's just nobody good enough right now. We're just going to wait till the next window. That makes zero sense. I don't buy that shit.
Okay. Yeah. I don't disagree necessarily. I'm just trying to provide some context. I mean,
Oh no, I know,
Yeah.
I know you are, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to argue with you. I'm trying to stand up for everybody listening to this podcast. Going, there's no way they can't find somebody to help this team.
Yeah, it's kind of a mystery. I really do think it was too late on Paxton by the time they knew, but at the same time, you should have been looking for a center back for months and months and months. I mean, I think it's unforgivable, this one, that you didn't have a center back lined up, because we've been saying all winter that they were missing one. We all like Sam Junka. Sam Junka shouldn't be starting 34 games at center back. He should be a wing back or a fill-in starter, right? I agree with you in principle that, like, I don't know how you couldn't find somebody. Now, it is harder to find a lefty, I give you that, but I think they have to keep in mind that you had to get rid of somebody too. So it's not as simple as just grab a player.
Oh my
it's like,
gosh.
who am I going to cut? I'm just saying.
I could think of 10 guys I'd cut on this team.
Yeah, well, the Hunt said money. You know how it is.
Would you like to run through the roster and play a game with me, Buzz?
Sure. Well, we've done that before. But listen, remember, too, that there's a rules changes coming in the next window. Remember, they're adding these expansion of the amount of high-end players you can have and the amount of buyouts you can have is going to come into play in the next window. It's not coming at the end of the season. So there's a whole lot more tools available to them and a whole lot more capability available to them in the next window. So, I really just think it came down to a calculation on their part that, like, what they had offered to them and what they had found. And granted, you're allowed to criticize them for their inability to find it, but they just didn't feel like it was right. So,
Do you guys, if you were able to get Nico or Dan Hunt or Zanata or anybody else kind of high up in the staff and take them out for drinks and get them a little boozy, do you think in their most honest moment they've essentially written this season off already?
Ooh. No. I certainly don't think the coach has, because he won't make it through the season if he does. Man, I would hope
he's
not.
also in a contract year, so he needs to.
Zanata just got a big, raise and like an extended contract. So I suppose he might have, but Dan Hunt is so emotional, and there's all this talk that they're not really very happy. So I don't think so.
When you say there's all this talk that they're not very happy, can you expand on that?
Just the things that make Nico's seat hot, just the chatter we hear, behind the scenes, that it's a results game, and that, yes, there are things like the injuries that are mitigating, but at the same time, it's been a problem for a while. I think, look, we've talked before about historically the Hunts are very, very patient. I think that they've passed that. I think because this is going back to the middle of last year, I think Nico's seat is very, very hot. I think he's in trouble with the ownership if he doesn't get something righted here, and so I'm sure that's why he's celebrating these smaller victories in terms of, like, seeing things that he can be positive about and move forward with. But this is a huge game this weekend against Houston here for him, I think.
Does he get sacked if they lose this game?
It depends. If it's bad enough, if they get stomped, and stomp doesn't mean scoreline. Stomp just means comprehensively outplayed. If you continue to see the same problems without any solutions, if he continues to just roll out the same thing over and over, I think he'll be in trouble. It could be as early as this weekend, or maybe it'll be. But I just think he's definitely on one of the hottest seats in the league right now. I really do.
Do you think they got a plan if they do sack him?
No. That's part of the problem. It's like, who can you get? That's it. This is the first time the Hunts have gone outside the Hunt way, and it hasn't worked. So I don't know that they wouldn't just go back to the Hunt way. So,
Well, I'm not sure. I think I think Nico was kind of out of the Hunt way, but at the end of the day, he was just another lightly experienced manager.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't somebody they had a connection to. He wasn't somebody from the shot in their own system or the head. They already knew well. They usually only hire guys they know well, and how much this job gets paid. So relatively speaking, we don't know exactly, but
Well, yeah, earlier this week I had tweeted out kind of a chart of all the people, the guys, the managers that the Hunts have hired, and it's very clear. Like, there's a clear profile of who the Hunts hire for this job, and it does beg the question that, and to be fair to the Hunts, because in the last couple of years, and we've talked about this and given them credit for this, that they've changed their ways in terms of spending, in terms of salaries. They're middle of the pack in wage bill. They've increased the amount of money they were willing to spend in transfer fees, which is a big problem historically for these guys. And they've spent money in marketing and changed that and had a lot of success. Do you think, Buzz and or Dan, do you think there's any way that the next frontier that they cross is the significant money bags for a manager?
No.
No, you don't think they do that?
No.
Why?
Because they're the Hunts.
Yeah, but they changed on these other things.
Yeah, but Zanata is really entrenched here. He's the one that made the franchise profitable, and for the Hunts, that's everything. And Dan.
So is Zanata the problem?
Well, that's a totally different conversation. But yeah, price plays part of the problem. And Dan Hunt likes to play around with this big toy. So it's those guys are wanting to be involved. Like think about it this way: like who are big name coaches could you get that would want money? Jesse Marsh. I don't know, Bruce Arena.
Bruce Arena.
Sure. Are those
Porter
dudes going to come here and work for Zanata and Dan Hunt for lower money than they would get everywhere else?
No, not lower money.
Porter's not available. Porter's got a job.
Well, he does right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not. No, I don't think it's going to change. I think it's what it is. The job is what it is. It's not going to change dramatically, I don't think. Not without getting rid of Zanata, because none of those guys are going to kind of come work for a TD that's got more juice than them. Not this one, anyway. It's different if you're going to go to Atlanta and work for Lagerwey, who's got a proven track record of winning championships and being one of the best TDs in the league. All Zanata does is sell players to make the franchise money.
I can think of one exception.
Go ahead.
Who?
If Papi wants to come home, because the Hunts have known him for donkey's years. He's probably the one exception to the rule where it's like, hey, if he wants money, we'll give him money. If he wants control, we'll give him some control.
100%. I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, but there's probably zero chance Papi's interested in coming back based on what he got, the Orlando situation.
Well, yeah, if he got fired, he might, but he's not about to get fired. He's getting that team turned back around. He's got 3 wins in a row or whatever it is. So.
Somebody asked me the other day about Jason Kreis.
Yep. What about him?
Would he be in line? Would he be? They'd consider hiring for this gig, and would Jason want it? And would he be? And the next obvious question is, do we want Jason Kreis as a manager at this team?
I mean, he's at least won a cup. I would say that the Hunts probably would entertain it, but I don't want to speak for Jason. But my instincts and my gut says that while that they've repaired a lot of their relationships, that right now I don't think Jason would accept yet. I don't think they've done a good enough job.
He's also in a director role in that really nicely performing RSL team. So why would he want to bail on that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
There are some guys that are intriguing, that are out there that would fit the bill, but I think we can save most of that conversation for what happens when they actually make a change, because we may have months of this or the whole season before they make a change. Like usually they wait to the later part of the year when they do actually give up on the season and are looking towards the next season. I just think that because it's been bad for since the middle of last year, that I think he's on a really hot seat. So that's but he could pull it out. If Jesus gets healthy and starts banging in goals, it's over. This conversation is null and void. He'll be fine.
I'm trying to go back and think about was it the 2009 season that currently is the worst?
Yeah,
they're competing. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's when David Ferrer arrived.
So what was it that turned the season around? Because they went on that terrible start, and then wasn't it like a 4 or 5 game winning streak?
David Ferrer is what happened.
Oh, is it? It's specifically he got introduced into the team.
I think so. Dan,
Is that the season?
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe you're not familiar enough, but I'm pretty sure that's 2009.
Yeah. Well, no, I just didn't know if it was specific David that was the spark that caused the improvement in the team. Whoever was the manager at the time, who off the top of my head I don't even remember now.
Shellis.
Shellis did something else other than one player. I don't. I just in my mind, thinking back, I remember David Ferreira being a transformative player, but there was something else about that season that happened in the back of my head that caused the change suddenly in the improvement of play. And I can't remember if it was a formation change or multiple players just kind of found form, but maybe it was just Ferreira. I don't remember.
Well, Andre Rocha came in from Atletico Paranaense from Cap.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a name I haven't thought of in a while.
You know, he had some trouble. Jair Benitez was on the team. He had some troubles with Pablo Rossetti. You know, Shellis did. I think that's before Daniel Hernandez came in. I think Daniel Hernandez didn't come in until the next year. So you can just look at that. You can just look at that season, and after Game 8, which is where we are now, they proceeded to tie the next two and then win one, and then tie the one after that, and then they had a loss. But then it's like they won 4 of the next 6. So it's right about this point in the season, mid-May, they just went on this tear, and they only lost like 6 games the whole rest of the year. And then 2010, of course, then they got really defensive. Even more defensive. Like Ugo, at some point in this same window is when they traded Drew Moore for Ugo Iamolu. So that gelled, and George John gelled. And Dax McCarty was a rookie in 2009, so he progressed into the team. Dario Sala came in, started playing some goal. There's a whole lot of things that season. Breck Shea was playing pretty well back then. So other than
that was before he and Shellis fell out.
Yeah, other than David Ferreira showing up that season, that's the big thing. Let me see if I can figure out exactly when he showed up. Yeah, it was somewhere in the middle of 2009. He came in February. So basically, for the first part of that season, the first 3 or 4 games, and then it just went. You know what I mean? So
yeah. All right. Well, Buzz, you mentioned you went to training, got updates on all the stuff. So let's catch up and what's happening currently.
Armindi's looking good still, so no problems there. So his minute should go up. I would imagine he'll be close to 90 for this game if he's not, completely cleared. Marco Farfan is back in training full time again, cleared of his concussion. I specifically asked Coach how Marco fits into the team, and he said wing back. So, Sebastian Leggett appears to have picked up a knock. I don't know what it was, but he wasn't training. They didn't give me a lot of info on him, so I think it was it felt like it was we'll see later in the week. So everyone will just have to check the injury report to see if he's available or not. I saw Alan Velasco outside running, and I do not think he will be ready anytime soon, based on what I was watching. So there's that.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. Jesus Ferreira on Tuesday was working on the side, and Coach said that he was going to return to training Wednesday. So just like the week before, he'll come back to training, and if he comes to the week unscathed, cross your fingers, he might be available off the bench this weekend. But I'm not going to, again, check the injury report when it comes out, the official one. But I'm not super optimistic based on the fact that it was on Tuesday and he wasn't back in training yet. So basically, Coach said like at the end of last week, there was a little bit of just something, again, with the hamstring. So they were just super paranoid about it because of the cold. Like if it had been a playoff game, maybe he would have gone. But so really that's it in terms of injury. The one thing I thought I saw was fascinating is that I watched some of the rotations, and I noticed that it seemed like he was looking at some people other than Dante Sealy at wingback, and then he proceeded to have like a 20-minute conversation with Dante at the end of training. So I think there's a legitimate chance that Dante might not start this weekend, which is amazing considering how locked in Coach has been, using that guy. So I think if I look ahead to Houston, I'd have to say that I think he'll stick with the 3-4-3, and then based on what he said about Nkosi specifically, both when I talked to him and then the reaction of people, I think Nkosi will be back in at that center back over Omar, but otherwise it'll be the same Ibby and Sam Junka. And then if I'm gonna take a stab at the wing back situation, I'm gonna say Paul on the left, because last game they did that switch foot wing back thing. I think he'll leave Paul on the left and bring Eamon in on the right over Dante, just based on watching him have that long conversation with Dante. Like Dante's like, what the hell, at the end of training. And then Musa, I think, is a given. You know what? Now that I think about it, I was talking to somebody else about the way Houston plays and how narrow they are. And I think because Legette's hurt, I think you might actually see Bernie play left wing back instead of Dante. Because you do want some offensive punch wide to make Houston have to stretch the field a little bit sideways. So maybe I'll do that, because with Legette out, you might need Paul up underneath again, like he started at the beginning of the season. So I'll think it'll be Musa up top with Paul, and then Yaramendi, and then you can just pick whatever people you want. I think it's likely that they'll try and do the 3-4-3 like they want to traditionally, which is with Musa, Paul, and then somebody else up there, whether it be Ansa again, who's played fairly well in that spot, or somebody like that. Or you could see them do like they did the last game, which is where they had Legette underneath, and you could put Paul and Musa up high as a combo, and that way you have 5 players in midfield almost, and try and overload Houston's really good central midfield. So those are kind of the way I look at the team this weekend. The midfield trio is tough because you really like Yaramendi, of course, but then you come back to this idea of like, okay, probably Frazier, because he plays the best when Yara's next to him. Because who else do you have other than Patrickson maybe? But I think that like Hector Herrera might have a field day with Patrickson.
Is Herrera back?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know 100%, but I believe he's back. I think the expectation is he's going to be back. Whether he can go 90 minutes or not is a different question. So, other than that, the change I'm kind of making a guess at based on that conversation. Maybe they should have gone inside and not done it in front of me, but I'm going to say Bernie at left wing back and then Ema on the right. And that way Paul plays up top with Musa, and then other than Yara and Frazier, you pick who that person is. Do you like Ansa as the front three? Do you like, I don't know, Siki? I mean, really, where are you going to go with the midfield problem? So I'm not super optimistic about all that. If they play the way they played the last 30 minutes, last 40 minutes against Colorado, I think they have a good shot. But if they play the way they played in the first half, they're going to get wrecked. So that's what it is. Houston's very defensive. It's going to be like a 0-0, 1-1, 0-1 game. It's like 1 or 2 goals are going to just in the whole thing. It's not going to be 3 or 4 because Houston's forwards are not very good either. But they hold it together better as a group.
Houston's only given up 8 goals this season.
Yeah,
they've only scored
defensive.
9.
Yeah,
but they've only given up 8, which I think is the best in the league. Yeah.
Stylistically, they play kind of like Dallas does. It's not exciting necessarily, but it gets better results than it does for now.
Well, they have almost 3 times as many points.
Well, yes, so. Results matter. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Let's see what else is on the list. Anything else from Nico you got at training that you'd like to share with the class? Just like,
we were talking about this idea of like, where are you going to get goals from? And because we were talking about like, he talks about, we had these moments that we didn't convert, but this guy did this guy did that. And this is the way this team's always played under him. It's right. It's a low volume of shots. It's always been about efficiency of chances. You make a good chance and get a shot on goal. If they get a high ratio of shots on goals to versus shots, then they'll do well, which is why you need Jesus, because he's the most clinical finisher you have. I talked to him about Musa, about how, he's frustrated and demonstrative, and he said that he's talked to the guy a bunch of times, like especially when he first got here, that Musa told coach that like Look, I'm a demonstrative person. You're going to see me gesturing and yelling and stuff, but I never quit. I never stop, and that was obvious to me. It was really one of my biggest takeaways from the game was that Musa doesn't stop. It doesn't quit. He keeps going. So that's really nice. So, if you can figure out ways to get the ball into his feet, you're going to have a chance. Which is why it's so important that Jesus comes back, because Jesus will attract a lot of attention. The fact that no one else is playing good up front, like the Bernie hasn't been producing or the Dante hasn't been producing, means that everyone can focus on Musa. It makes it really difficult for him. So you need to open it up a little bit, get good things happening. So that's going to be the biggest thing. And that's the end, is like when you talk to Coach, he still believes. He's still fighting. He's still trying to get everybody else fighting. The players are still fighting for him. It seems to me, I haven't seen him quit yet. So at least not all of them. Maybe one or two of them have, but certainly some of them seem to have a lot of investment in this producing and playing. No one yet has given up, I don't think.
Well, guys, I've thought a lot about this in the last couple of days and thinking about recording this particular episode. I do feel like it is our collective responsibility to the curious to try not to be total Debbie Downers about all of this and try to figure out ways of being positive and have fun with this over the course of the season. So, Dan, I'm going to ask, is it possible that you could come to every episode with a joke?
No, absolutely not.
A small setup, a small stand-up set, like could you do 2 minutes of Dan comedy or something like that?
That's a totally different podcast.
Is it? You could do football humor.
No, Nottingham Forest doing a good enough job of that this week.
See, he does have it, Buzz. Yeah. He's got it in him. He can do it. He threw out a Forest joke.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't going as well as I wanted it to.
I just keep the silence in it. Just keep the silence.
All right. Very good. Well, anything else, boys? I think we've done enough doom and gloom for an hour of somebody's podcasting week.
Well, you asked me, Peter, who I would put in there. I mean, like, of the team that has, what do you think that they should be doing in terms of personnel differences? Is there somebody that you think you'd put in?
No, I think that's the reason why I'm. That's why I think I find all of this so frustrating. Is that the players that I'd like to see play are injured, and the players that are out there aren't very good. But I also respect and understand that, Nico, I assume, knows his roster infinitely better than I do, and I think he's probably putting out the players he thinks can serve him best. And maybe he's also doing a bit of maintenance work with Nikosi's attitude and trying to get his head right with ball. And maybe that's happened. So maybe that helps a little bit, but I don't see anything sitting on the bench that I think is transformative to this team. And I think that's the real frustration I think most of the fan base has. I don't know anything more about this team than I think anybody else does in terms of the secret players sitting on the bench that's suddenly going to make this thing even 20% better.
Yeah. I do think that Marco Farfan being healthy will help a bit, give you some different options out wide.
Yes, and I do think if there's a topic for conversation is what is the better pairing? Is it Farfan in the back three and Junka as a wingback, or vice versa, if you stick with that formation?
Yeah, that's fair.
Neither one of them are very good left center backs.
No.
We agree with that?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
But one of them's probably a little better going forward than the other.
Yeah, there's a conversation you can have about Nkosi Safari playing left center back and having Omar or Carl Sante or somebody in the middle. That's a possibility that you can be discussed. Except that we haven't really seen that idea. We've seen it a little in training. We haven't seen it on the field. It's either Omar or Nkosi, not Omar and Nkosi together, which is kind of interesting. You got July 18th is the next window open, so you got to get through May, June, so 3 months basically. So that's a haul until you get to that next window.
Well, yeah, it's a frightening run if they're not since they're not making any moves now. To think that you're going to have to go through July, and I was just trying to think of how many games that is comprised of. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in between now and the end of May. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 13 games between now and when the window opens, approximately.
Yeah. The season will be over.
13 games. That's a possible 39 points. How many points out of that 39 do you think Dallas captures?
I mean, I have no idea. I'd have to look at them. But that's the thing is, like, if you can be within like 10 points at the bottom of the playoff line when that window rolls around, and you still have half the season left, you know.
I take it back. It's 12 games because the Memphis Open Cup game is in that same list, so it's only 12 games.
Right. So, it's just a question of, Coach has made that joke that they're going to be the Seattle, that they're going to get people healthy and they're going to get a body or two when they get to the next window, and they're going to make a second half. Sure, all you got to do is make the top 9, right? So it's like it's not inconceivable if they can keep it within a shout. If it gets to be South Lake debacle horrific and everybody quits, that's different. But in the meantime, they're 7 points back at Seattle. Wow, is it already that many? Good Lord. Yeah. 7 points back at St. Louis. Holy schmoly.
Hey, at least there's an Open Cup game to look forward to in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, right.
Maybe 2. Who knows?
Memphis is licking their lips, looking forward to that feverishly, I'm sure.
Knight Pickering's going to have a hat trick.
That sounds creepy.
What, Knight Pickering?
Yeah, it's going to have a hat trick that game.
No,
for Memphis.
I thought maybe that's what Dan. Never mind.
Oh,
sorry.
no.
I think we've all lost each other. Okay, Buzz. Anything else?
North Texas hasn't lost a game, so that's fun. They
hit tree fall in the forest.
Yeah. No, they do some for them. They do decent numbers. 500 to a couple thousand depending on the game. They play the same 3-4-3. They play it differently though. Like, it's funny to watch because they play a 3-4-3. They play a mid to low block too, just like the first team, except that because they're playing a low block, they put on real wingers and they play vertical. They counterattack basically with real wingers. They don't try and build out.
That is a novel idea.
Yeah, it's that, like, because we talked through till we were blue in the face about how if you're going to play this formation, you can't have real wingers. You have to have these 10s underneath. But that's if you're trying to build out. If you're trying to play through the midfield where you get outnumbered. The other alternative is just to boot it and go and like just play with real 3 vertical guys up top and just go for it like a track meet. And so that's what they do. I mean, John Gall is all about picking the power and the size, and that's what they do, and it works. They try and build out a little, but as soon as they run out of ideas, they just turn it on and go like it's a track meet. So they don't. It's the same, but it's not exactly the same. So it's kind of fascinating to watch that difference.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, right? When you think about like the difference in the formation, is tucking the 2 attacking mids inside is what necessitates having the wing backs, go the full length.
Right.
If you pull them out wide and you play them as wingers, you can have just wide midfielders. You can have wide, just a slightly aggressive fullback, something that would actually play into the way that Marco and Emma actually played a position.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is that with Dallas is what we just talked about, is that they want to then build out and they want to try to go through the middle with Yaramendi, and all of a sudden Yaramendi and, well, before it was Paxton, but now it'll be Frazier, for example, are now 2 against 3 or even 4 players because you're doing that. You're trying to build through there. If you just would turn it into a track meet, obviously I'm not talking about like a Route 1 English football, but like this very vertical, like once you get it, just go in a hurry and don't try and build. You'd have to watch North Texas play it.
You could also kind of play it like how Lucci liked it, where it was the 6 was just, a pivot was an actual pivot. It was one 2-touch pass out at the back to the 6 spreads it wide. You just have a Yaramendi there just distributing wide. you've got that width going forward.
Yeah, I'm just afraid the way that the Dallas wants to play that it wouldn't work. Can you remember last year when we would see the 3-4-3? They would just get annihilated in the middle of the field when we saw it 3 or 4 times. So they have to make that adaptation. It's just funny to watch it. North Texas play it the other way. Which is more like, well, not only some people play it that way. Basically, Nico Estevez is trying to play it the way like Zavi plays it, or with these really high level players, and he didn't have that, so it's kind of.
How is the Anise Sully kid doing in North Texas?
Goodish. He has his moments. He's kind of raw.
Is he a regular starter?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, when they send down those first team guys, especially the ones that are fringe, which he is, like he comes back to first team training. There's a difference between a kid that's down there, is a homegrown, is down there all the time and never comes to first team training, and somebody like Solly who comes back and forth, or Korcha who comes back and forth. When those guys like Korcha or Solly or go down, they start. Nolan Norris, like he trains with the first team, but he goes and plays with North Texas, he starts automatically. So, Tarek Scott is their leading scorer. He's getting his edge back, which is exciting, but he doesn't go back and forth. Korcha, Nolan Norris, and a Solly. So Ennis starts all the time basically. So he's really bursty. So he has moments that are dangerous, and then he has moments where he switches off. He's need more time. Don't be in a rush with him. But honestly, he's done well enough that like I'm okay if you want to bring him, put him on the bench, and bring him in late. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but over some of the things they've been doing.
All right. Well, thank you for the North Texas. Is there a nickname for that team, by the way?
Los Toritos. Baby Bulls.
Did you just make that up?
No, I've been calling them that for like 4 years. I know you don't watch or read it or
heard you.
Toritos.
I've never heard you use that nickname once ever before.
You obviously don't read my stuff about North Texas.
I guess
I
not.
don't use it
Okay.
it's like because I'll reference FC Dallas as Los Toros, so they're Los Toritos.
Yeah,
the Little Bulls.
I wish you just called Dallas the Burn.
The Burn. Well, I do some. I mix it up.
Right.
I don't use the mascot name for the team very much. I usually say FC Dallas or FCD.
Okay. Anything else, boys? We've beaten this dead horse even deader.
Yeah. Well, I think we're still trying to be analytical enough, try to offer options for what you might see, how the coach might try and make it better. So.
Yeah, it's been a very low energy pod, Buzz.
Well, I know.
I think that's what I'm saying.
I'm sitting in a hotel room with, hotel room walls. I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
I apologize. I know that I have not brought the same energy as usual, but I'm trying not to be like I am when I'm at my house.
We don't want you to get swatted. Yeah, I hear you. All right. Well, very good.
Third Degree, the podcast, has been brought to you by Soccer90.com, your source for FC Dallas, U.S. national team and international club gear, and the FC Dallas True Man Military Appreciation Hat. It's still available. Limited supply of that, of course. Hurry and grab yours while supplies last. Third Degree listeners get 20% off in-store or online using the code Third Degree. Just mention at the counter. Use it online. 20% off. Code Third Degree. Soccer90.com. Some exclusions may apply. This podcast has also been brought to you by the Lindstrom Law Firm. For wills, trust, probate, and business law, call 469-515-2559. That's 469-515-2559. Or visit lindstromlawfirm.com for a free consultation.
Let's wrap it up for the evening. And Dan, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
As always. And Buzz, I hope you have a good, successful trip down in Florida and a good time in Key West.
Thanks, man. We might actually have to do the podcast from Key West next week. That'll be fun.
Now that sounds like a kick-ass time. Most certainly.
Yeah.
And thank you to the patient and supportive and ever-enduring FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week, hopefully with better news and better attitudes on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Have you ever been more excited for a derby?
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.